Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis on maven.net/MishTalk. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Pleasure to be back on. I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan over Memorial Day weekend. Waterfalls were roaring. I get back home. I look at a wheelbarrow that I left out in the yard. It was completely filled within like an inch of the top with water. I suspect we've not seen the peak of this crest yet. There's going to be more flooding along the Mississippi, down through Illinois, all the way down. Bad news there, Jim.
Whereas here in British Columbia, we've had a record lack of rain and forest fires are already raging away. So It's either too much water or not enough. It doesn't matter where you live.
Wow. Well, we've got new central bank sponsored insanity here. I'm just getting ready to do a post on this. We have inversions now on negative yielding bonds. What do you think about that? This is something I hadn't thought about or considered, but we have negative spreads on negative yields. How about that, Jim?
I didn't think they would do that on this side of the Atlantic.
Well, this is a function of the ECB's negative interest rates policy, where it thinks it's going to promote lending by charging banks interest on money that it deposits with the ECB. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we give billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars every year to banks by creating excess reserves and then paying interest on them. It's free money here. In Europe, they're taking, banks, let's say, for instance, Deutsche Bank, which appears to be about ready to go under, and actually charging them money for loans that they've got on deposit. It's crazy, but that's what they're doing, Jim.
I've never understood how negative interest rates work or how that could promote an economy by sucking money out instead of putting money in.
It can't possibly work, and it hasn't worked yet. I mean, that is the policy on something like 2/3 of the world's bonds here now. So we're talking about primarily the ECB and Japan. The dollar is relatively strong here in the U.S., and we have at least positive rates of interest here, and more so than any other major country in the world.
I've never understood, though, how they expect to sell bonds with a negative interest rate. Why would you put in to lose money?
It's not a matter of selling them. Here in the Fed in the U.S., if the Fed prints money through quantitative easing, which is how all these excess reserves come about, both here and Europe, they are creating this money. The banks are required to take it, and it hasn't spurred any lending. So what do the banks do with it? They put it on deposit with the central bank, and in the U.S. they get free money on it. In Europe, they pay money on it. That's simply the way it works. So it has not, even in the United States, they've admitted that QE has been a failure. But central bank policy is such that if it doesn't work, they try and do more of it until it doesn't work more.
Is there any solution to it?
Well, I don't think there is one here now. The global economy is heading into recession. The yield curve, I noted yesterday on my blog, or a couple of days ago actually, is inverted in 33 different spots. We don't have an inversion between the 210 yet. That's the standard recession signal. I don't know if that happens. What we can say for sure is central banks have so convoluted the entire treasury market, the bond market in Europe, the same in Japan and China, that there's no price discovery on any of this stuff. And by the way you make money on negative yielding bonds is to bet that they go further in the red, and you collect more money by owning them. It's just craziness, Jim.
We'll have more with Mike Shedlock right after the break.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mike Shedlock. Mish, is the UK trying to bring in a standard where politicians aren't allowed to lie anymore?
That's funny. I never heard of such a thing. Do you have this thing up in Canada? It certainly is. They're doing a private prosecution in the UK based on, and it was crowdfunded, because Boris Johnson, who was promoting voting for in favor of Brexit, supposedly the claim is that he told a lie during that campaign. So here we have a crowd-funded private prosecution for telling a lie by a politician. Does that construct exist in Canada? It sure does not here.
Well, what happens here with politicians is, of course, they'll say, for example, we'll bring in $10 a day daycare if we're elected. Mm-hmm. But as soon as they get elected, they say, the books are in such a horrible mess. The other government left us with such a deficit, we can't afford to do our promise. That's how they wiggle out of it. Can a private citizen crowdfund a prosecution in Canada? I'm guessing the answer is no. You can lay a private charge, but what happens is the Crown has the right to take it over, and as soon as they get it, they stay the charge. They cancel it. So that's how they get around it. But yes, there have been private prosecutions, but nobody's ever been able to go ahead with one.
Well, this one is proceeding in the UK. Now, the weird thing about this, I forget what it was exactly that Johnson said. I remember the number, though. It was 350, million euros or something. He was talking about a charge that or money that the UK had to pay the EU, and he used the number 350 million. Okay. Now the charge is that was a lie. Now the curious thing about this is that it's absolutely the truth. Now, it wasn't all the truth, but the UK does pay that, or at least that was the widely recognized amount of $350 million. But what Johnson did was, some of that was rebated. So let's say $100 million was rebated, so it was really only $250 million, not $350 million. Already, that would be like an insane prosecution on top of it. But the rebate doesn't come from the EU, so he told the exact truth, actually, was that this money went to the EU. Some of it was rebated, but it was rebated by individual countries in Europe, not the EU itself. So his statement was actually factually correct. Now, the second interesting thing about this is that the deal that Theresa May negotiated was so bad that rebate, was no longer there. So the actual number, no matter how you slice it, was $350 million. So and for the government to go ahead and decide to prosecute this case is absolute craziness. Now the question is, who does this help? It probably helps Johnson. At least that's how I would look at it, because he can probably, make the case publicly what the numbers are and show, how silly this whole thing is. So, but the whole process fascinated me. I wrote on my blog, I said, just when you thought that this couldn't get any stupider, it did. And so here we are. That'll be an interesting one, interesting case to follow to see what happens with that one.
And on Brexit, do you think that they can get a deal by the deadline of October 31st?
I do not believe so. It is theoretically possible, but it takes it takes going against the odds, and this is why we have to assume that the odds are at least reasonably close. Boris Johnson is the alleged front runner to replace Theresa May. He has said, you have to believe him, and I do, which might be a mistake, that he's in favor of a no-deal Brexit. Now, the number two person, Dominic Raab, said the same thing, even more emphatically, and he was a 5-to-1 choice, so, call it 20%. So, if one of those two guys, or there were two more, candidates, but they were really long shots, actually, who said the same thing, that they favored, a no-deal Brexit. If a prime minister gets in, that genuinely wants no deal, it will be extremely hard to stop that person. The only way that they could realistically do it would be to hold a motion of no confidence, have it succeed, have a new election, have the winner of that election support making a deal or remaining, and that's what it would take. And it would all have to happen by October 31st. So if one thinks that the next prime minister is willing to walk away, is willing to have a no-deal Brexit, it's unrealistic to think that that chain of events that I just mentioned is all going to happen and happen by October 31st. I don't think so. And there's another kicker to this. Certainly if Boris Johnson gets in there, he is widely disliked by a number of people. He's also, if he gets in, that means he's supported by more. But some of the Tories have threatened to have a motion of no confidence that he's voted out. Again, we just described the scenario. Even if he's voted out, there's a chance that someone like Nigel Farage becomes the next Prime Minister of the UK. Now, wouldn't that be fun? But the problem for the Tories making this case is there are 15 or 20 of them who would immediately be voted out of office because their constituencies don't favor remaining. So here, to get this vote of no confidence through, these people making this claim would probably be voted out of office, and they probably know that. So how often do politicians do something they know is going to cost them their job and their position? Not very often. So I think that this whole motion of no confidence thing is an idle threat. So it all is going to come down to what the next prime minister wants to do. Right now, I see it as 80-20 for wanting to leave with no deal. Put your own odds on that. Whatever those odds are, that's roughly the odds of the UK leaving with no deal. Maybe it's 60, maybe it's 65, maybe it's 70. I came up with 80. I might be too high. But realistically, the odds are that someone supporting no deal is elected.
Do you think they might hold another referendum?
I don't believe anyone wants one. The Labor Party, other than the Liberal Democrats, because they see it as a way of overturning it, it's unclear how a new election, a new referendum would do. Very unclear. And it also leads to some ambiguities. How is the referendum worded? Would the EU wait for such a referendum? I don't believe they would. The UK would already be out by the time that it happens. The Prime Minister would have, and the Parliament would have to agree to hold this. How long would it take? What's the time frame? How would it be worded? Would it even be won? I don't think people want to drag it out that much, again, other than the Remainers. The Remainers total about 40%. Those that want to leave somehow, some way, total about 60%. It's tough to see it passing. It's tough to see it passing on time. The UK will have already left by the time that gets going. Possible, unlikely.
We'll have more with Mike Shedlock right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mike Shedlock. Mish, at the U.S. trade talks with China. China now saying it may withhold rare earths from the U.S., and it's the vast majority supplier of it in the world. And one of the biggest reasons is to process rare earths, you have to use harsh chemicals like sulfuric acid, and U.S. production of rare earths was shut down because the whole surrounding area becomes contaminated. Are we kind of stuck only, is this China's so-called Trump card?
I believe it is. Other people disagree. I've seen two reports disagreeing with me. The case is here. Well, here's the case. Rare earths are not that rare. They're just called rare. That's true. That part of it's true. The problem is what you said, but it's even deeper than what you said, is that the production of these things produces toxic sludge. Not just the harsh chemicals like sulfuric acid and stuff, but also it concentrates radioactive stuff. So right now, China is the only country willing to put up with this. But the idea behind the this is no big deal crowd is that, if China does this, and by the way, they did this once before, about 20 years ago, I think, and what happened is there was the price of rare earths shot through the moon. So they now became profitable to do in the United States and other places. These new mines were opened up, and the price plunged. And then China flooded the market with rare earths, undercutting everybody on price. These mines were no longer profitable. They went out of business, and China regained its supplier of 80% of the world's usage. So it tells you, that was a destructive consequence, actually, for both the U.S. and China while that went on. But ultimately, China prevailed because it was willing to put up with this toxic sludge, and it was willing to cut prices to make sure that it was the world's only supplier. I think the same thing would happen again. And what people are overlooking is it takes years to get one of these mines in place. It's not like you can just start a rare earth mine and immediately produce this stuff. Even the mines that are mining these rare earths, they actually, take this ore, they ship it over to China. China is the one that processes it, even if the mine is somewhere else. And so China is the one then that has to deal with all the toxic refining sludge. So and rare earths are used in weapon systems. They're used in cell phones. They're used in powerful magnets. They're used in electric motor car engines. They're used in a whole number of places. So and there's no huge stockpiles of these things anywhere. So yes, China could severely hurt the U.S. for as long as it takes to get more rare earth mines in process. Let's assume that could be done in a year and a half. Well, okay. What about the collapse in production of all of those things for the next year and a half? Well, it takes to sort this out. So yes, I think the other analysts have this wrong, that China could indeed threaten to do this, and the U.S. would probably have to cave or struggle to get one of these mines up and deal with all this sludge, in the meantime. I don't think it's going to happen. Meanwhile, President Trump is in the midst of a re-election campaign here now. Hard to believe, but it's next year. And so does this throw the U.S. into recession? I think we're bordering on one already. I think we're in the midst of a global trade war. I think, China has probably had enough of Trump, and they're willing to do things to get rid of Trump. So I don't think Trump wins if the U.S. is in recession, and I think the U.S. is headed to recession.
Mish, thank you so much for chatting with us.
A pleasure to be on. These things are all fluid. Everyone's expecting that China's going to be the one to cave. I think if anyone caves on this issue, it's going to be Trump. We'll see. Always a pleasure talking to you.
My guest has been Mike Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis on maven.net/MishTalk. If you have any questions for Mish or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.